Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, mean lady hates everyone, especially us. We buy her house after she failed to pay her debt. Cheating while we're engaged? I'll exploit your phobias. Ex-girlfriend was a scammer, so I put her in the slammer. Bippity boppity boo, I destroyed her family too. Before we get into today's episode, remember to subscribe so you never miss a video. So let's get started. Mean lady hates everyone, especially us. We buy her house after she failed to pay her debt. First of all, English isn't my first language, but I try my best. I am on mobile, so formatting may be shit. The house we live in was built at the same time as hers. My parents were often at the construction site and help if they can. The strange lady was nice to us at the beginning. But that changed soon. This happened around Christmas 2017. We have a neighbor who is very unpopular in our neighborhood. She is well known for harassing people who use the public path at the left side of her house. The path is 1 out of 3 to reach the public playground behind her house. If someone uses the path, she would scream at them that this is her path on her private property, which is wrong. Sometimes she would close the path with a red and white plastic chain and won't let anyone use the path. She would scream at kids on the playground when they were loud at daytime. She always has her shutters almost down so she can stalk the people on the street and stay unseen. If some kid's ball landed in her garden, she would bring it to the kids and destroy it with a knife right in front of them. All kids knew this and would run by her house if they wanted to go on the playground. When the neighbor's kids were playing in the winter outside in the snow, she would call the CPS equivalent in my country and tell them they were locked outside by their parents as a punishment. If someone walked by her house at night, she would often call the police due to a noise complaint. She was known by everyone in our neighborhood as the witch. But she hated my family in particular. We lived right beside her house. Our houses shared one wall. When me and my sister were young, we would use the swing in our garden or jump on our trampoline. She would regularly file noise complaints and often harass me and my sister when we were alone in our garden. If my parents heard her screaming swear words at us from the first floor of her house, they would yell back. If me or my sister walked on the path by her house, she would scream at us. We used the path daily on our way to school. One time when I came home from school, she was in her car with the trunk on the sidewalk. When I walked by the back of her car, she howled the engine and the dark exhaust hit me. Almost every night she would hit the shared wall with something to wake us up. Sometimes she ring on our door and try to make us go to other neighbors to complain about small things. We often had lawsuits with her. One time because her trees grew 2 meters over the border. Another time because she built a fence by sticking bamboo mats in the dirt and tearing it down the next day and telling the police we destroyed her wooden fence. We won all lawsuits against her because my uncle, he's teaching law school, gave us good advice on how to deal with her and named lawyers he knew were good. She never paid the workers who repaired things at her house and the electrical and water bills. When her old car broke down, she didn't pay the car mechanic and never got her car back. She was in department and had a mortgage on her house. When the foreclosure came, we were at the court and bought her house. She was with us in the courtroom when the auction was and tried to buy her own house but wasn't allowed because she couldn't provide proof that she has enough money. We bought her house where she lived for 20+ years in front of her. We bought it because my parents were at the construction of her house and knew the workers did a great job at building it. We renovated it when she left. We repainted all rooms, renewed the insulation and put everywhere where no tiles were new wooden floor. My grandparents will be moving in her old house this fall. Ex-girlfriend was a scammer, so I put her in the slammer. Bippity boppity boo, I destroyed her family too. Sorry about the length, but you need the details. Around the time that I got my first full-time job and finished college, I decided I was ready to venture out and start dating. I had heard about this amazing app through a few of my coworkers, a little thing called Tinder, so I decided to give it a shot. After about a week on the app, I finally matched with a woman who we will call Talia. Talia lived in a different city than I did, but the day we matched, she said she was visiting a cousin. We messaged through the app, and after verifying she was real through her Facebook and Instagram profiles, we exchanged phone numbers. She said she was employed full-time, had an apartment and her own car, and was somehow still single. We talked for about 2 weeks on the phone. always at night after my shift at work, before we finally had a chance to meet when our schedules matched up. I drove my beat-up 1996 Honda Civic to her town, spent that Friday night, I forget where we ate that night, and in the morning we had breakfast at Waffle House. Talia did have her own apartment. However, she lived next door to her grandmother, who I awkwardly had to meet the next morning. I learned from Talia that her car was actually in her grandmother's name and her apartment was in the name of her cousin. She went so far as to show me family portraits, with her cousin, to talk about her abusive ex, and even shared with me how her laundry room was embarrassingly infested with flies and roaches. We officially changed our social media to dating that day. Keep in mind that this was my first relationship in almost 4 years, so I was excited. The scam. Talia also told me that day that she had been fired from work about a week earlier but was too embarrassed to tell me. I asked how she had kept up her bills and she said that her grandma and dad had been helping her. Talia asked if I could help her make her car payment, which was due that weekend. I refused. She then explained that she could get a payday loan, which is banned in our state, and could put it into my checking account. I felt uneasy about it and asked if there was another way she could get the loan. Talia said that she couldn't use her grandma or dad's accounts because they had burned her in the past. I thought it was weird, but she started crying. So I called my bank, where I had an account since high school graduation, and opened a linked checking account. I gave Talia the new checking account number and routing number. Talia contacted a payday loan company in Alabama, and by Sunday morning, she had the funds in my linked checking account. For our agreement, I gave her the money. Talia promised to repay the loan within 2 weeks. I had my reservations but went back home and back to work Monday. Talia called me on Wednesday and said she had a new job. I asked if she had the payday loan squared away with her first paycheck. She said she did, but I still got charged $47 2 weeks after she set up the loan. I called Talia to verify the loan was going through her, and terminated the charge from the payday loan as I was not the signed person. Talia and I agreed to meet Memorial Day weekend 2 weeks later. She stated that her dad had given her a check for the entire loan amount, $1,800, and that she would deposit it into my bank near her. Like a fool, I let her deposit the check right before Memorial Day weekend. 2 weeks later, the payday loan company charged another $47 plus penalty fees and another $47. The $1,800 check bounced. Talia stopped answering her calls and blocked me on everything. I called my bank and informed them that I was a victim of fraud. Within hours, my main checking account, into which my paycheck had gone, my savings account, with $800 saved for a new car, and the new checking account were closed. My best friend from college, we'll call him Clark, found Talia had 2 of every social media account, the one she shared with me and the one on which she had a boyfriend. Her cousin, from her family photos, was actually her boyfriend since high school. Talia was 22, 23. Her boyfriend, we'll call him Jason, was in prison, but from their social media posts, she was visiting him once a month, minimum, and had plans to marry him. I spent days trying to get back my accounts and my money. One of the representatives from my bank, and Clark and my mom, advised that I should press charges for fraud. My bank mailed me a copy of the bounced check for criminal investigation purposes, and it showed Jason's name and not Talia's father's name as the owner of the check. That's when I decided to get revenge. The revenge. As mentioned before, Talia's apartment had a minor infestation of roaches and flies in her laundry room. While I went through legal agencies to pursue pressing charges of forgery on the check, fraud, etc., I found the name and phone number of Talia's apartment complex. I left a message for the apartment complex management that Talia and her grandmother both had filthy apartments. Within a week, Clark showed me that Talia had posted a request for temporary housing for her and her grandma, since her parents wouldn't let her move in. Talia's payday loan company began calling me, as Talia had given them my phone number instead of hers and they had not received payment yet. I was still reviewing my legal options at the time. One day, I answered and notified the rep that Talia had fraudulently used my checking account. The rep who called me transferred me to their legal department, who was very interested. It turned out that Talia's grandma and her father owed to the payday loan company. It wasn't a lot separately, but the payday loan company had enough evidence, with my claim, that Talia was the ringleader using her family's accounts. I turned over my evidence, including Talia's text messages promising to pay, the copy of the bounced check, and my bank statements. By the end of the year, Talia was arrested on several charges. Her grandma and father were also arrested but took pleas for lesser charges in exchange for turning over evidence on her. I didn't have to testify at the trial, but I kept informed. Talia's grandma had had a minor heart attack when she was arrested and had a more significant one during the trial. I'm not sure if her grandma lived or died after the trial. Despite this, Talia went to prison for multiple counts and will serve more than a decade behind bars. Cheating while we're engaged? I'll exploit your phobias. A while back, I was engaged to a guy who seemed like a good choice. Attractive, funny, good job, owned a home. I learned he had a bit of a downside, though. He was a cheating slimeball motherfucker. Not just a one-time one-night stand with after too much to drink, which I would have still been angry about but could have probably gotten over, but repeatedly with more than one woman. I picked up on a few cues, but eventually had things confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt. I was venting to my brother about this, and told him about how I planned to move out while the assbutt was out on a week-long business trip. He volunteered to help me before I asked, and then got this amazing devious grin on his face. "We can also leave a memento for him," he said. When I asked what he meant, he said, "Pennywise and his friends." You see, the Dick Dipper was scared of clowns. Not just a little uncomfortable, but fucking terrified of them. Even as a grown man, a clown on a TV show, web comic, or book would freak him out and he'd have to change the channel or click away. My brother owns a print shop and is protective of his little sister. So in the couple of weeks leading up to assbutt's trip, he printed off a dozen's pictures of clowns in various sizes. Ranging from really small wallet-sized ones to big poster-sized prints. We framed most of the stuff in some super cheap plastic frames. Others we laminated. We managed to move all of my stuff out pretty quickly, which gave us a lot of time to get things set up for my ex. We took down every single framed picture and put up framed clown pictures. The clowns ranged from average clown to nightmare fuel hellspawn. Pictures on the walls, art prints, photographs in frames on tables. You name it, it was replaced with a clown picture. Where we became really devious was taking the laminated ones and placing them in things like the silverware drawer, the underside of the toilet lid, so when he went to take a piss he'd be greeted with this when he lifted the seat, in the fridge and freezer, on the back of cleaning bottles, in his underwear drawer, and a bunch of other places. We even made sure to put some in places that he wouldn't go into for a while so he'd get a scare months later. He had one of those attic accesses that you have to pull down on and a ladder descends. We put a big laminated clown face on there so when the ladder flipped open for him to climb, he'd get a clown face. While we were setting this up, I went a step further and changed the wallpaper on his desktop computer to a clown. I also took about 10 of his favorite movies that he had on DVD and replaced them with OME burned DVDs that had clown footage. They autoplayed, and we'd printed up labels that looked like the original DVD artwork. We put all of his original artwork and DVDs in the basement, off the ground and protected from damage. But surrounded by giant clown posters of Pennywise and the like. And a motion sensor that, when triggered, would play a creepy clown laugh. I left a note on the kitchen table that said, "I know about names. Fuck you. I'm out." After a few days of hard work of moving me out and moving a few clown cars worth of terror in, my brother, his wife and I celebrated by grilling some steaks and having a few beers. These were paid for by the engagement ring I sold. Once the dumbass returned, I got a text message or two that was along the lines of, "You bitch." It must have taken him days to take care of the photos out in the open alone. There was never any further action or legal repercussion for what we'd done. After all, what grown man would want to say that his ex-fiancée scared him with clown pictures? If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and we'll see you in the next video.